I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
All
All
right.
right, so let's finish this conversation that we were having about the holidays and getting around family and having conversations or not having conversations, depending on, what the mood, what the energy is of the vibes of the folks. And so you were kind of talking to me about being at Brian's, who is a Black identified person, and so being in community with a household of family members who are also Black identified. And do we have those conversations or not? How did you feel about it?
I did not feel, I mean, I'm typically the one that brings them up, but I did not feel like I could. I'm just super mindful of not wanting to rock the boat with his family and yeah, still feeling my way through that a little bit. And then also too, my daughter was with us and she was meeting them all for the first time. So I was really wanting that to go well and wanting her to feel comfortable. And I mean, she and I are both, and she has less filter than I do in terms of bringing that kind of stuff up and being really forthright about it, shall we say, is a nice way to say it. And I really, on many levels, didn't was nervous about her filter and whether or not it would go over well because it was the first time she was meeting all of them. So and I want to acknowledge that that's my privilege, that's my ability to assess the situation and shy away from something that could prove challenging simply because I don't want to feel uncomfortable, and I
Mhm.
don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. Now I don't behave the same way with my personal family, my family of origin, my mother and my sister and her husband, and yeah, I'm much more loose with my corrections and my thoughts and yeah. So, but I did not spend this holiday with them and on some level that was intentional.
Mhm.
So yeah. So how is it for you? Do things come up in your gatherings typically or do you have to
Well, meh. I mean, so I was with my nuclear family, so I also don't have this kind of juxtaposition of being amongst people that I'm also like building new relationships with. These are
right.
the folks that have known me, since we was running around in diapers. So I'm talking
Yeah.
about my older brother, my younger brother, my sister cousin, because there's a person that came to live with us as a young person who is biologically my cousin, but she's my sister because we were raised together, and all of the young people, and my mom and stuff like that. So most of us have the same political, social ideology. I might be the person who is the most vocal about it, and communicative about it. So everyone is always having the expectation that I'm gonna come with something, which is what I did, um, of
Yeah.
course. But yeah, but it's all in the same mind. It's fine. Now, what is an interesting thing is that my younger brother has married into a family of folks that are probably don't have very many social relationships with non-white humans. They're
Okay.
like Texas white folks.
Okay.
So there's always an element of checking in or observing when my little sister-in-law now, when she might be like, what are they talking about? Or be surprised about how loosely we do talk about things that I'm sure that she had no idea would be the conversation. Because there's moments where you definitely see shock face um or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of her like listening, just trying to figure it out. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
that's a clear observation. So as you're speaking about being at Brian's house, it is bringing in the image of my sister-in-law being amongst us. But we also have a very full blended family experience also. So there's ethnic associations that are flowing through the day
Mhm.
for everyone.
It's interesting that you bring that up, that it's not just about, like in my experience, it's not just about whether or not I feel comfortable or whether or not being in a house full of people that don't look like me is comfortable for me, but it's also whether or not, or at least what I heard you saying is that it's also whether or not it's different for them, so Brian's family, I don't think, has celebrated many family gatherings where they would have people that do not identify as they do in that mix. And so I think, if I'm remembering some of the times when I first went to go meet them and first went to go stay with them, it did feel a little more awkward, I guess. Not awkward maybe in the derogatory sense, but just new and fresh, and and there does feel like there's been more of a relaxation when I come into the space. I don't feel It doesn't feel as different or odd for me. Now my daughter was meeting them all for the first time this trip, so that might have upped that level of, oh, we gotta act whatever. I don't know. I didn't get any sense of that from them. And when we took family pictures, my daughter did her typical, Mom, I don't want to be in the pictures. And then I had to, bring her in or cajole her in, and she did it anyway, which was great. And so yeah, it felt very easy. His mom met us at the door. She gave my daughter a big hug. It was, from the rip, she was like, your family. And at the around the table before we ate and we were saying what we were grateful for, she kept saying, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my family, my new family, my existing family, all
Oh.
this stuff. So she was very, I could tell she was making a point to let us know that she felt like we were family being there, which was lovely. It was nice to feel that. So so yeah, and my mom was in the hospital an hour away, had just gone in the hospital the 2 days
Yeah.
before. And so I was my brain was pulled, in a couple of different directions. So yeah, I didn't bring up anything challenging this time. And I don't know if I will in the future. We'll see. But it is getting to the point where I'm feeling a little more comfortable that if I did bring something challenging in, it wouldn't necessarily be, but I'm going to approach it very differently. If I'm honest, I'm going to approach it super differently in my white family than in surrounded by Brian's family. I'm going to do that very differently because it's just,
Well, I'm imagining that it would also be a different conversation, right?
yeah.
Like, because contextually, like the
Sometimes,
experience of whatever it is that you're talking about, sometimes, yeah,
sometimes there
sometimes
are
it can
things that
be,
come up that I go, whoo, and
of
I don't
course.
say, in Brian's family, and even with conversations with he and I sometimes. Things
Mm,
will come in that's either kind of sounds like a misogyny kind of statement, or
mhm,
colorism kind of statement, or other things that I hear and I don't quite know what to do with. I'm like, oh, so
mhm.
you and I have talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, and in those moments you don't know what to do. Like, did you hear anything in your conversation over this last gathering that was an aha moment or like a ooh moment, or did anything stick out to you that you can think of?
Trying to think. I mean, you know, I don't want to tell tales, but yeah, I mean, there are references to things like making reference to somebody being light skinned and laughter around that, or a feeling or a sense of judgment around that. There's always some misogyny that can come in, at different times. But I don't really, I can't really think of anything that's like was super directed and poignant. But
Mhm,
there are things here and there, and I just go, "Whoop, whoop," but I'm,
mhm.
I'm not gonna say anything. I mean, 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have even heard him. So it's like,
Oh, okay.
uh,
How about as your own, like with amongst your
with my
nuclear?
family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my family's, I mean, my siblings, their spouses, not so much. I think the last time anybody said anything that really kind of took me aback was an extended She's an in-law family member, and I showed her a picture of Brian and I together. I was telling her that I was dating somebody. This was a couple of years ago, and she said, "You don't like white guys anymore?" That was her response. And she had a massive stroke a couple of years ago. She's had some kind of TBI things that have changed her demeanor and the way she, not saying that hasn't how she's always thought, but her filters are different. And my daughter was in the room when she said it, and she said to me later, she said, "Mom, I can't believe you didn't say anything." I said, "No, I wasn't. If she did not have the health issues that I felt like were leading to her not knowing just how to respond to that, then I think I probably would have I would have addressed it, but I decided not to go for her on that moment. Other than that, I do have a couple of extended like friends of family. Like last Thanksgiving, I was in around my white family, and this gentleman who was best friends to my stepfather came. They had family. They had Thanksgiving dinner with us, and there were three people of color in the space. And his first comment to me when I talked to him on the phone afterwards was, "It was the most diverse dining table I've ever been around," because he
Yeah.
was very aware that he's only accustomed to seeing people that are non-white serving him and not sitting at the table
Mm.
eating with him. And that was the first thing.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Hmm.
so yeah.
And was that diverse experience something that he was happy to have experienced, or was it just still a shocker that was trying to like
He would be the
resonate?
term I would use. I think he was just very aware that he had people of color around his table that were dining with him and that were welcome guests. Ironically enough, my adoptive brother is married to a white woman. And ironically enough, because you know the trope about how white people never know black people's names, so this gentleman who was white had met the wife of my brother. He met her for the first time at around this table, and she's white. And when we were talking on the phone, he was referring to her as the blonde woman. And I was like, "Oh, you mean, and I told him what it
Yeah,
was.
saying the name,
I'm
saying
like,
the
"Is
name.
that by association that you don't know what her name is because you can't be bothered because she's married to a black man?" Or, I mean, I was ready to rip him a new one of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I know the answer to that, but so no, I don't know that he was happy. He was terribly uncomfortable, and
Mm,
he's a Trump supporter. His wife, who is from Canada and is French Canadian. The last time I had a long talk with her, she said something to the effect of that trope of how America's becoming non-white, and so therefore we have to protect white people at all cost. And so that was a comment that she made, it was a few years ago, but I know she still believes that. So I know what time it is with those two, and I was nervous that they were going to say something. I was ready and I was listening to everything that they said pretty much the whole time because I was armed and ready if they
yeah,
pulled
yeah.
any foolishness out, but they didn't. They were just, you could tell they were uncomfortable. And then the first conversation I have with him afterwards, it was all about all the diversity. And all that
Hmm.
stuff. I know what time it is with them for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, having those experiences, it's really easy to feel the tension. And
Mhm.
then what do you do in those moments? Because really, when you hear something that you know is such an ouch, because it's like such a shocker in those moments, it's very hard to gather yourself quick enough to be
It
able to
is.
be
It
in
is.
responsiveness to it, and
Yeah.
then be in responsiveness to it in a way that is going to be transformative, right? So you also want to, sometimes you're just reactionary because when people say some out of the rank stuff and you can't get past it and you just lose yourself. The things that you
I,
be
I'm
trying to work
I'm
on
guilty of that quite a
forever.
bit, because
Yeah,
I'm still developing the skill set of how to be.
yeah, man.
Love how you just put that. How can you be transformative in that moment? That's my goal, but that is not
Mhm.
usually how it comes out of me when that happens. And
Yeah.
especially if I'm like primed and ready for it, like I was last year when we were sitting
Hmm.
around that table and I was just waiting for him to say some foolishness. If he had, it probably would have come out in a way that was not transformative in the moment.
Well,
If
you
I'm,
want to be thinking about being transformative, right? Because I'm always in the mindset of this is the opportunity to make sure that somebody doesn't harm somebody
yeah,
else in a different environment,
yeah,
especially if you're somebody that has the tools to be able to address how
yeah.
somebody is showing up and not recognizing the impacts of the
Hmm.
way that they're showing up.
Hmm.
And so it is, but this is a practice. Or this is like
Yeah,
an effort and an energy because people can say things that in the moment, that absolute moment, it takes you into like, I remember I can give an example of being on a meeting and one of the members of the meeting was communicating in sarcastic jest that they were a white supremacist, right? And they're just like, what? I'm just a white supremacist. I'm just a, racist supremacist. And like they were saying it in such like a tawdry kind of like nonchalant way. And they were making the point of feeling hurt that that was what the narrative was around them. But
hmm,
as they're saying this so flippantly, they're not recognizing the impact that it's having on specifically the non-white people that were in the meeting,
yeah,
but then also like the other folks. And it's like, you're saying this thing so flippantly that actually has some real significant harm. And everybody in that moment was just like in shock mode. Like, because
yeah,
it was like your face right now where you're just like,
yeah,
because what do you say, like,
yeah.
in that moment? And, taking some deep breaths, I was the person that chose to be in the responsiveness. And I was like, I'm hearing that you said and gave the reflection and was like, and I have to understand if this is what you actually were meaning or if you are really recognizing that
Curious about.
because this is some information that if the way that you're offering it, I need to be able to sit with myself and reflect if this is an environment that I can be in because there's the potential for me to be in a lot of harm. So really drawing it on how I was being impacted, hoping to give other people a platform to speak into their thing, and then also offering the person in that moment to recognize that in your flippantness there's some real serious harm that you are creating that you might need to be aware of. And like when you're with family, it becomes really hard to navigate what that looks like, especially when you're dealing with blended family and you're dealing with people who like have different experiences. One thing that I think is really helpful is for a person to, and we always say this, but like to really be thinking about what this means to show up this way and being really true to 10 toes down on how you stand on what your values are.
Yeah.
So that in communicating them, even if they are not like the most inclusive or belonging, inviting type of viewpoints, I'm imagining that with your family members or when you're gathering with people during these times that is supposed to be the strongest social connections that you have, that if you do say something that's madness or hurtful, there is an opportunity for that to be corrected, right?
Mm,
So like if people are in community with someone who doesn't conform to like heteronormativity and you're something is communicated that is a true value and you're amongst the people that care and love for you in hopefully whatever your family makeup is,
hmm.
then it's an opportunity in that moment to listen to the person who might be impacted so that you can have a shift because you're dealing with folks that you care about and you can see like how that effect will actually, what the effect will actually have on them.
I love that description, and yeah, and I always love the way you phrase things in terms of and I want to try to remember this the next time I'm in a setting or something like that happens to say, well, I think I'd like to be in responsiveness to what you just said, and for me, anytime I can come up with like some language buffers and I'm one of these people that I think on my feet well, but when there's an emotional component to it, I like need the words. I say I need the words in a file. I need to be able to access that file like really
Access to,
quickly.
yeah.
Like I've got this file cabinet in my head and I need to, but I got to think about the words before. I got to formulate them, realize when I want to use them, and then stick them in the file so that I know how to get them when it's a moment. because I'm not always good about, I just get explosive because because I'm imagining that somebody that I love has been hurt by what that person has just said, and it grips me, and but I also know that that doesn't solve anything. If I let myself
Mhm.
get swept away by that wave, then I'm not contributing to, like you said, there's been harm. Can we address it? And maybe it can be fixed or rectified. That's the part that I absolutely want to be a part of doing. And I don't necessarily, I think in metaphors, I think in pictures. So I'm thinking like, opening the dam and the water coming rushing out because the community below it is parched. They're in a drought and they need water. Well, if you open the dam so much that the water comes flooding down, then you're just going to flood the community and they're not going to get quenched. They're going to get drowned. So it's like I have to be better about doing that and not just breaking the dam open so that then I just wipe out the town below. Because that doesn't help
Flooding
anybody.
and drowning the
It,
communities,
it
you
can
white
be so
women.
good in the moment because I'm like, darn it, I'm mad at you and I want to do this, but it's like it doesn't
Mhm.
solve anything. That's not the ultimate work. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's real. And I mean, it's so funny because another part of the wonderful ritual of being in family and community together is that we binge watch. And so the
Mm,
thing that was happening on the TV for binge watching was Baddies. And for folks who don't know, that's a reality TV show
okay.
that is a spin-off of a show that was happening a long time ago called Bad Girls Club. But these are women who have a really strong reputation for standing strongly and fighting. They're fighters. And so Baddies is like the next generation of fighters that are out there that all come to live in the house together. And so for the 2 days, I was listening to this in the background. What I'm going to just say is madness, just
Yeah.
madness. So you're hearing it in the background, but if you're not like sitting down watching it, you're just hearing a whole lot of chaos. And you're
Hmm.
like, what? So it gets to the point of this TV show where the chaos is coming to Jamaica, and I'm in Jamaica. And so now my young person is like, Mom, come and tell us if these are some of the places that you're familiar with that is on the screen. So then I go to sit down and with the collective of the family members and now I'm caught up in the show, right? So I watched the episode of them traveling to Jamaica and there's 3 episodes subsequent after the first one. And so now you're caught up in the show of watching what I've listened to as chaos that was driving me crazy, but I'm watching these people fight and I'm into it. And I'm like, why am I into this like this? Like, why is this so? Yes, there's just something about this. And my young person, you just gotta love young people
Hmm.
because they can give you such good analysis outside of yourself. And she was just like, well, it's probably because you're able to live vicariously through these women. They're doing the fighting that you probably actually are always suppressing and wanting to hold. And I was just like, yes, that might be the thing. The light bulb moment, but then the additional reflection is I'm a very peaceful person. Like it really takes a lot to bring me outside of my intentional effort towards being a peaceful person, right? And even in saying that, there's the language for you. But it's like, if I'm really in consideration of me living vicariously through watching these people who I really want to fight and knowing that I have to intentionally be a person, then what is the internal aggression and anger that I'm actually holding inside of myself?
Mm.
You see what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Flight,
like
freeze, or fold. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's really something to like check in with because that's being manifested somewhere in my existence,
Mm.
right? And then so like where is the check-in with that? And so it's in these moments where you get the opportunity of some real good reflection
Yeah.
about how you're existing and the energies that you have around you. And that also means that folks need to be watching out because you could have some ticket time bombs
I mean,
walking
I
through
know I have that
community
rage in
and
me.
amongst you.
Yeah, I know I have that rage in me. I mean, I think I've talked before about when my daughter was born. I I don't think I because I was in a marriage that was abusive and had, so he was the one that was always the aggressor, kind of, that was the role that he played. And then when I had my daughter, I all of a sudden this rage came out in me, not when she was, the rutabaga stage and wasn't doing much of anything, but when she started moving and getting into things or whatever, my rage started to show up and I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Well, my mom was a rager. So it was
Mhm.
there all along, but because of my dynamic in the family, I was the middle child, the older sister was the alpha. And so I never got to be the rager. I was always raged
Mhm.
upon. And
Right.
so it was when my daughter came
Ex-
into the world, and it also manifested with road rage. I was a horrible road
Mhm.
rager.
Oh.
And I
Mhm.
didn't stop until she got old enough to start parroting what she was hearing, and I'm pointing back here because she was in her car seat. It was usually in the car, obviously, road rage. And she's behind me, and I'm hearing her start to either use the tonality or the actual words of what I'm screaming at the other drivers. And that's when I realized, oh, I need to stop this. But that was all coming up in me. And so I feel like that I
Yeah.
said all that to say that I know that the reaction that I can have when somebody says something racist or, bigoted, and especially if it's around either the man that I love or his family or anybody that's non-white, that I feel like a sense of protection of and solidarity with, that I that's where that comes from. That's the first source is that floodgate. And I don't know if I will ever get to a point where I can absolutely always mitigate it and be mindful. And I would not be a good negotiator. I have a horrible poker face. I'm just like, I mean,
Mhm.
when you've said something, if you know me at all, when you've
Yeah.
said something that's
That
not
trigger
okay,
point.
because it is all over my face.
Mhm. Yeah, no, but and that's the thing, right? That's the thing, like bringing it into like the current
Hmm.
context and like kind of like our social climate is
Yeah.
that people are in this very like protected, aggressive
Hmm.
energy
Hmm.
right now, right? Because of the elections that have come out, because we're moving in community and not knowing who's going to want to pop off and all of that. And the solution is like we're talking about all the things that we know exist, but the solution is being aware of it. I think that the most important part of this conversation that we're having is like being aware of it so that you can be intentional about taking care of it and also calling in the tools and the people and community of support that help you to navigate that space in a much more successful way. Like that is the point of having this conversation and kind of making ourselves aware of how it is that we're showing up and being present in our communication with one another.
Yeah.
Because if we are paying attention to it and we are past that age of 25 when we know that our amygdala is developed enough
On a
for us
little
to
bit
be
fully
able to
formed.
process some
Yeah. Yeah.
things. Do you know what I mean? But calling in that knowledge base of love and humanity amongst each other,
Mhm.
because we do know that we're holding this level of, you know, protection and aggression for our clan because right now people that are in survival mode in a real way,
You
you
really
know,
are.
in an unstable like what is going to happen. And whenever we're in that type of a friend used to call it the VUCA moment, VUCA, volatile, unsteady, chaotic. And I
Mhm.
don't remember the A, but to the point where people are just not in their ability to make good decisions. They're more reactionary than proactive. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. And the pointing towards, self-care. I mean, I just recently started therapy for the first time in a long time. I mean, the last time I was
mhm,
in actual therapy was when I was in marriage therapy, marital counseling. But I haven't had individual therapy. I've been in recovery for a long time, so I've kind of gotten my therapeutic tools through 12-step programs. But it just recently, in the past like 6 to 8 months, is it just hasn't been enough. I need to get with somebody, and I really love this therapist that I found. And just the other day I was having therapy and I was multitasking because my mother is still ill, and so I'm answering texts and I'm doing all kinds of things, and she had no judgment. She just sat back and she's like, I'm going to invite you to just kind of tap in and figure out where in your body are you feeling this? Are you feeling like it's really hard to stay focused right now? I'm just like, oh my God, I love you.
Thank you for bringing me back.
Thank
Yeah,
you for bringing me back. So yeah,
yeah,
so I know that therapy is not accessible to everybody because it's not cheap, but yeah, I agree with your plea to everyone to just really be for all of us to be super mindful and just kind of get into our bodies. Whatever can bring us back into our bodies is what I'm learning.
absolutely.
It's really important to stay centered and grounded as we navigate what's to come. So.
Hmm.
Thank
Yeah,
you, as
thank
always.
you. Yeah, man. Good conversation. This is fun. The holidays always bring all kinds of good foundational storytelling and reflection for
Mhm.
us. So, just inviting everyone to laugh with life if you're able to, as much as you can. Laugh with life. So,
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
let's let's.
Why do I give a fuck? Why do
Thanks for
I
joining
give a
us.
fuck?
Until next time,
Why
as you
do I
move
try
throughout
so
your day,
hard? Why am I
continue to
so
ask yourself,
attached? Why do I give a
Why
fuck?
Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Deanne. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.